question me when I ask for my money. I've given them the right to question me, what do you need this money for? Is it that important? That's being wise and being strategic about something that you're weak in. And so when you go to that person and the person realizes that, but you just tell them, I just saw this shoe at Optimum and it's very nice and I want to buy it. It's like, do you really need it? No, you don't. So you're able to save money in that way. That's being strategic. In your studies, if you find it hard to study, you can find a study partner. You can find someone and say, okay, we are going to, even if we're not able to come together, we're going to choose a time that we're going to study, let's say 9 p.m. At 9 p.m., they're going to call you, and together you're going to study. And the person is going to be checking on you every 30 minutes. Are you still studying? Are you still studying? If it means deleting an app from your phone that is taking a lot of your time, then you do it. That is strategizing to win a war. That's being intentional about it. And it's important for us to do that if we want to win at the end of the day. In Psalm 27, the psalm we just read, in verse 4 and 5, David said, I'm going to read that real quick. Verse 4, we just read the first 3 verses. I'm going to read verse 4 and 5. He says, one thing I have desired of the Lord, that will I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble, he will hide me in his pavilion. In the secret place of his tabernacle, he shall hide me. He shall set me high upon a rock. And that brings me to the third point I want us to remember when we are facing war, when war rises around us. You need to remain under the commander's instruction. There's a commander of an army. You might look like you're just one person, but you're actually an army too. Remember in the book of Kings, I think Elijah, was it Elisha or Elisha? Sorry, Elisha, Elijah, one of them, they were standing with his servant, and a literal army was coming against them. The king had sent an army against them, and his servant was panicking. He was like, what are we going to do? And Elisha just prayed and said, God, open up his eyes so he can see who is with us. And God did, and he saw legions of angels behind them. So you are an army also. Even though an army is surrounding you, there's an army that you are going to face that army with. God is with you. That's enough army. The angels of God are with you. And so you need to remain under the commander. You are not the commander of your army. God is the commander. You need to remain under his instruction. David said, one thing I've desired, one thing I've wanted is that I should remain in the house of the Lord. That doesn't mean David was going to move into the temple. That's just saying that I will remain under the authority of God. I'm going to remain under his command. He said, why am I going to do that? Because when I'm faced with this war, in the time of trouble, he will hide me. He will protect me. He is the commander of our army. So we need to remain under his instruction. And so how do you do that? How do you remain under the instruction of the commander? We need to obey God's voice. It comes back, everything just usually comes back to the word of God, to listening to the word of God. Because before we get to a point where we can recognize the voice of God, we need to be in the word of God. The word of God is going to be what is going to make us get used to God's voice. So that when God speaks to you, other than his word, you're going to know that that's God. So you need to be able to identify God's voice. You need to be able to identify the commander's voice and obey. If the commander says, you're going to go this way, you need to be able to go that way. Not the opposite direction. If God says, this is what you need to do, you need to stay here, then you need to be able to stay there. But then how about this thing? Sometimes you might feel like God is quiet on this issue, but he isn't actually. He's speaking somehow. He's using something to speak to you, and sometimes we just miss